Welcome to Module 3 of Humanities 9, where we will study the Bronze Age of Greece. Let me start this module with a simple question. Do you have a hero? Is there someone in your life that you look up to so much that they transform the world around them, that you would give almost anything to have your life look a little bit more like theirs? Well, in the Bronze Age of Greece, which lasted from about 3000 BC to about 1200 BC, these people existed. At least, kind of. They existed in a story. And this story, you've probably heard of it. It's actually maybe the most important book of all time. It's called the Iliad, and it's by a blind poet by the name of Homer. It tells the story of the Trojan War, and there's great heroes, and there's great tragedy, and there's great drama. But most importantly, there are individual heroes that the Greeks so looked to that they changed their society, and they changed their entire culture to pursue the good life, as according to these characters. Let me give some background to explain what I mean. The Bronze Age of Greece really began with a group of people who lived on the island of Crete in Greece. And these people were called the Minoans, or more precisely, we call them the Cretans. They lived in beautiful palaces, adorned with incredible artwork, and they focused more on religious life and more on their seafaring bureaucracy and trade than they did on their military culture. They're an incredible civilization. But perhaps because of their lack of focus on military, they were conquered by a group of people called the Mycenaeans, a former subject of their empire. And these Mycenaeans are a little bit like the proto-Spartans. These people were focused on warfare and conquest by the sword, and they transformed those Minoan palaces to Mycenaean citadels. The conflict between the Minoans and the Mycenaeans is a little bit colorized by the geography of Greece, which we'll focus on pretty extensively in this unit. Separated by islands and separated by water, and with an absence of overflowing rivers, like in Mesopotamia or in Egypt, caused a little bit more of a focus on resource distribution, and sometimes some cutthroat competition for those resources. And although the Minoans and Mycenaeans did an incredible job of this, unfortunately, in the 12th century BC, a cataclysmic event happened, and we call this the Late Bronze Age collapse. In this collapse, which is no single issue, there was an incredible cascading failure of historical events. Everything from climate change to volcanoes, to tidal waves, to warfare, to mass human migration. All of these came together congruently to cause the outright collapse or the significant devastation of nearly every civilization in the ancient Near East. The Mycenaean Greeks were completely wiped out. The Assyrians, the Phoenicians, and the Egyptians were all significantly weakened by this. In Greece, this period after the Late Bronze Age collapse was called the Greek Dark Ages. These Greek Dark Ages were a period of almost no human civilization, at least that we have in the archaeological record. Specifically, there's no evidence of large-scale human trade, of large-scale human architecture. There's really only evidence of people living in the hollowed-out shells of the former Mycenaean and Minoan structures. And although there's many events that we'll look at that were responsible for the Greeks clawing their way out of these Dark Ages, which lasted from about 1100 BC to about 800 BC, there was one particular thing that we'll focus on, and that's the aforementioned story of the Iliad. Because when the Greeks looked to the incredible heroism of people like Achilles or Odysseus, and they really thought about the courage of Achilles, or the bravery of Hector, and the honor of Hector, and the beauty of Helen, and the cunning, clever mind of Odysseus. This inspired them to live a better version of their life. And this inspired them to look a little bit more like the great heroes of the Iliad, both to emulate their successes and to avoid their failures. There is one Greek word in particular that we're going to look at. It's the Greek word arete. This word in English is usually translated simply as virtue, but it means oh so much more than that. It's better translated as achieving the highest human potential, or being the best that a human being can be, maximizing the human potential. And as we look at these Homeric virtues, or aretes, we will see that Homer had a very clear vision of what it means to live the good life, and that he is challenging his Greek audience and his modern audience to live a life that is worth living, to live a life that is the good life.